Hello everybody, I am Dr. Farhan Zamir, an adjunct professor and academic specialist at Biotechnica, Bangalore. For today, we will look into yet another important video, and this concept would be on the research paper publication process. So I have done my funding, I have got my funding. Once I have got my funding, I am looking into my methodologies. I have done my research, I have executed my research, and now once the entire pipeline has been done, the manuscript is ready. Once I have the manuscript ready, where do I publish? And what is the entire pipeline of the publication of my research article? Let's try to understand. We will dwell in. Welcome back. So for today, we will look into the intricacies of the research paper publication process. Now, when I look into the research paper publication process, here there are three major players. The first player is the author, the second player is the editorial board, and not to forget the very important, but the last player is the publisher. So I have the three major players. One is the author, the next one is the editorial board, then you have the publisher. So there is a cycle which goes on between these three players, and let's try to understand this. Now, this entire story starts with the idea, the conception of the idea. So once I have conceived the idea, then the next thing is somebody would have funded it, either a governmental funding or a private funding. And once the funding has been over, I have received the funding, and through this funding, I would have executed my research. Either I would have done an in vitro modeling, or I would have done an in silico modeling, or if I would have done an in vivo modeling, or preclinical experiments or clinical experiments, and finally I have my observations and the results ready. So once I have this, I need to pen down onto a document. A systematic document has to be created. Okay, and this is the writing skill. And please remember, we have done an exclusive video on how to write a research paper and how to get a research funding. Okay, and how to write a research proposal. This I want you people to go and have a back reference so that you will be able to connect it in a much better way. So once I have all these things, the final thing is, the manuscript is ready, but how do I publish it? Where do I publish it? And what is the entire pipeline of publishing? This will give you a better insights. So what I do is, as a researcher, I am here. So I have identified a research area. Then once I have identified the research area, then I have designed systematic experimentations. I have a work plan, I have the workflow, I have a timeline, and all these things has led into the design of my research study. Once I have designed my research study, I would have executed the research study, and I will carry out my research study with various kinds of models. And once I do this, then I have the pile of data, big heap of data, in front of my table. And now what I do is, on the bench, I sit and analyze the data, either in the form of an electronic, with an electronic infrastructure, or I put everything onto the paper, classical graph and the pen method, and then I would try to analyze my data with statistics. Please remember, statistics plays a very important role. So any publication would require your statistical value, wherein n at least minimum is 3. Okay, so n value should be always 3. I would request you people to run all your experiments with the triplicate mode, and then in 3 independent experiments, which will actually strengthen your data. Do not think that it would take up a lot of time, and it is time consuming, and it is laborious and frustrating. But however, this will actually give up a huge amount of confidence on your research work. And finally, we are here that where do I publish? And once I have the data, once I have the results and my observation, where do I publish it? Now, this becomes a huge problem for most of the researchers, because we don't know where to publish. So since this becomes a big hurdle, now understanding this becomes or creates a great platform, so that I can actually pitch in my narration at a right point, at a right platform. Okay, so the next component is, once I have the manuscript writing, so how do I write a manuscript? So here there is a structure of the research paper which has been required. Now the importance of putting up this particular information is, every journal and every publisher, they have their own style of publishing. So either in certain journals, they would ask the results and discussion first, and then comes the methodology. But in most of the classical journals, they would ask for the introduction, and then comes the materials and methods, and then comes your results and discussion. So here the outline would be entirely different, the framework would be entirely different. So I would request you people to first read the guidelines for the authors. So once this has been done, onto your manuscript, you need to have a proper title, a very, very catchy title. And with this, you need to also put up who are the people who are actually associated with your data, especially with that particular manuscript. And every piece of data which has been mentioned into the manuscript, all the authors are confined to it, and they have authenticated that they have read the data, they have understood the data, they have interpreted the data. And very importantly, the responsibility lies on two major authors. That is, one is the first author and the next one is the corresponding author. The first author is the author who has actually executed the work, and the corresponding author is the author who has actually supervised the work. So both the authors plays a very, very important role. But apart from that, if there are certain authors who have helped in building up the data with their expertise, if they are able to help in improvising the data, then they will be cited into co-authors. So all the authors are very, very important. And at the end, you need to always have the corresponding author's address. So these details will help any point of time. If somebody is interested or excited with your data, if they want you to be a reviewer or an editorial member for their kind of a journal or for their publication house, they will always contact you. Or by any point of time, if another researcher who wants to adapt a methodology, and if they want to come and look into your paper, and if they wanted to understand much more better, which is rather than which is not been put onto the paper, they would always contact the corresponding author. Then the two important things which will actually highlight your research on the www, that is World Wide Web, is mainly through your abstract and keywords. So here indexing becomes very, very important. And if you are writing up a proper abstract and a keyword and then your title, this will actually help you in getting a lot of citations. So just make sure. Now, many a times when I look into a lot of reviews, what I feel is the keywords which are being used in the manuscript and the title, many a times they are redundant. So I would request you to have a separate keywords which will define your work, rather than putting up the repetitive words from the title. So please bear this in mind. Now, once I have done this, so again, we started with an idea, and this idea led into a research, and then to achieve this research, we have developed strategies, and with that strategies, a proper planning with materials and methods were being used, and then certain tactical approach to know whether I should do this experiment or not. Okay, if I am doing it, how is it supporting my data? How is it supporting my hypothesis? This becomes very important, and then this can lead into execution. And once you execute, you have beautiful results which will come up, which would be a resultant of your observation. Then finally, you have the success. Now on a slide, this looks very beautiful. This looks very lucrative, and many times this is encouraging. But on the other way, research, when you're actually doing it, this is not how it happens. Many a times you have a lot of humps and bumps, there are a lot of barriers which will make sure that one day you are super excited, one day another day you are like super depressed. So that anxiety curve keeps on happening. The hormonal rush of anxiety and depression normally happens, but this is how at the end will drive a researcher towards a publication. Now, onto a publication, you have the IMRAD, which has been followed. We have a detailed video on what exactly is IMRAD, so please look into the description. So continuing, you have the introduction, materials and methods, results and discussion. Please remember, certain journals, they would require a combination of both results and discussion. But however, certain other set of journals or the publishers, they would ask the authors to segregate, to separate results with the results with the discussion part. This is also an important component. Then you have the conclusions. Conclusion is, do not have vague conclusion. Make it sure that you have precise conclusions which can actually help. Now, certain things what you have not achieved because maybe because of the time constraint, because of the infrastructure constraint, okay, or because of the research scholar had to leave, or the research scholar had to complete the degree, okay, under all these constraints, according to you, what do you feel that more research could be done, okay, or if your junior wants to continue research, okay, what could be the ideas which could be shared, or another some researchers, if they are interested with your paper and if they want to continue your research, then you need to always give what are your future prospects of this particular data, okay, how exactly this data can help in societal upgradation or a scientific output. So here, finally, never forget to acknowledge very importantly your funding agencies. If you are getting a scholarship or if you are getting a fellowship or a stipend, okay, so please mention the number, okay, your stipend number, and also put up all the details of the funding agency and thank the funding agency for giving up the necessary funds. Then also remember, if anybody would have helped, okay, or assisted you during the framing or during execution of your entire work, and if they are not in the authors, okay, so just make sure you put their names into the acknowledgement, so that is the highest amount of gratitude what we can share with them. And finally, please put up a great amount of effort in designing your bibliography, that is your references. Most of the researchers, they think that bibliography is, you just take some citations or a cross citations from PubMed, or just you add it at the end of the references, giving either numbers or arranging in form of an alphabets. But make sure this has not been followed. Just make sure, every line is a supportive data, every reference is a supportive data which can build your hypothesis, which can, make your manuscript much more stronger. And the recent bibliographies will always have a lot of weightage. Okay, and finally, you submit your article to the publisher. Now, before you submit the article, there are certain again important criteria which has to be looked into. The first important criteria, in many times students being amateur, if they are doing it for the first time, what they do is figures and tables are normally being cut pasted, or many times people think that if I create a table, if I type in and then create a table, they feel that I have created the table, but the content is from somebody else. So again, this can lead into a lot of legalities. This can lead into plagiarism. So just make sure you do not copy anything from anybody. Okay, if you really want to cite their work, in just one line, mention the entire gist of the story, and please cite them. Please cite the authors with the corresponding year. So very importantly, design new figures. So it is a primordial factor which can actually, good quality pictures, good quality figures will actually strengthen your data. Then always give a caption, always give a legend and figure number to your figures. The same thing is, it will hold good for your tables and table legends. And very importantly, you need to sign a copyright form. Now, all the articles, all the journals is, they have made a copyright form as, a mandate. Normally, people would take it as right to copy. Okay, do not copy. So it is a copyright form which is, you're trying to openly announce that I am not, I have not incorporated any kind of falsification data or any kind of manipulated data, or neither my manuscript has any kind of plagiarism into it, and you are trying to authenticate it by any point of time. If it is being seen or it has been found that you are involved in these kind of misbehavior in terms of research or misconduct in research, you can always be penalized. And very importantly, this is a new trend which has been started. All authors are requested to indicate their contribution. Say, for example, if there are 10 authors, okay, who started, who conceived the idea, who wrote the manuscript, who executed the experiment, who did the statistics, all these information has to be put in, and this is called as contribution to the authors. And finally, if there are too many pictures, too much of data, too much of raw data, and that raw data actually supports your paper, and if it is not the part of your figure and your table in the main manuscript, always provide it as the supplementary data. or you can put it as supplementary figures, or you can also put it as supplementary tables. Now, once this has been done, I submit it to the journal. And how do I know which journal to submit? Now, there's a beautiful tool which is called as Journal Finder. So on Journal Finder, you can put up the keywords, you can put up your abstract, and then you can see which journal I can actually publish in. There are a lot of requests which would which is seeking for to show where do I publish, how do I use the tool. Maybe in the next video we'll also try to execute it. So here, the moment I submit my manuscript onto the portal, which is called as Editorial Manager, most of the journals are adapting an on portal online tool which is called as Editorial Manager, and this tool is AI enabled. It is an intelligent tool which will, it will look into the plagiarism. It will also look into some certain verbatim, and it will also look into, the quality of figures, tables, and then whether the entire structure of the manuscript has been, cited. And very importantly, it will also look into your references. So it becomes very, very important to have a keen observation from the first letter of the manuscript to the last letter of the manuscript. Otherwise, it will tell you that these are the rules which have been not followed by the author, and hence, it will be returned to the author without the editor being, viewing it. And then once the AI thinks that everything has been done, the next thing is the editor will have an option to look into it to see whether your kind of a manuscript, fixes, or it will get, set into the aims and scope of that particular journal. Again, this becomes very, very important. Now, if the editor thinks that, the piece of work which you have submitted is important and it will fit into the scope and, aim of the journal, then the editor will send it to the reviewers. So the reviewers will look into it, and then I'm sorry, here there is a spelling mistake, so it is reviewers. Okay, so the reviewers will look into it, and then once the reviewers would look into it, then the reviewers have complete right on rejecting your paper. Okay, it is not necessary that, the editor, when he passes on the manuscript, it is not necessary that all reviewers should accept onto that particular manuscript. Many a times, if the quality of work is, undergraded, so at that point of time, your manuscript is simply rejected with one or two following reasons. Okay, so just make sure you have a good structure onto your review. So once the reviewer thinks there is some minor adjustment which could be done, so the reviewer has an option for 4 different options. The first option is he can accept it in the way it has been submitted. So direct acceptance, only the best of the best quality articles have been, considered for this class. The second thing is you can go for a major revision. The reviewer can suggest a major revision, or the reviewer can suggest for a minor revision. This is the third type, or the last one which we don't want to happen. Okay, and that is, the paper can get simply rejected. So if the paper gets rejected, then at that point of time you cannot resubmit to the same journal. Okay, so once you will take up all the suggestions, reframe it, and then submit to an other journal. By any chance, if the reviewers are asking for a major or a minor revision, then you can incorporate all the minor and major revisions, and then write a response letter to the reviewer, to the editor, saying that all the suggestions have now been incorporated, and then you are allowed to resubmit to the same journal. When you resubmit it, again, please remember, the moment you say all the incorporations, all the corrections are being incorporated, it will not be blindly accepted. So this point of time, again, the editorial board or the editor will send back to the same reviewers, or sometimes different reviewers, to look into all the corrections, whether the authors have incorporated or not. And if the reviewers are satisfied, then your paper has been accepted. Otherwise, your paper is simply rejected even after, you incorporating all the suggestions which have been made. So just make sure this entire pipeline is blindly reviewed. So, your names will not be displayed to the reviewers, or your affiliations will not be displayed onto the reviewers. It is only the science which matters when it goes for a good publication with good impact factors. Then once you receive a letter from the editor saying that your manuscript has been accepted, then comes the publisher. So once the publisher is in, so the publisher within maybe 1 week to 15 days, they will be, putting up your manuscript into the page setting. Then they will do a typesetting, and very importantly, they will, once it has been done, it will send into a galley proof. And this is the last option for all the authors to check if there is some mistakes, okay, or minor, at this point of time, no major revisions can be incorporated. But if there is small mistakes which could be rectified before your manuscript comes online, okay, you still have, as a corresponding author, you still have an option to edit it. And once everything has been done, when it has been approved by the corresponding author, there comes the eureka moment, the point wherein all the authors, all the corresponding authors, first authors, everybody are happy. And this is how, when your manuscript comes online. So the first view, when you see a manuscript online, the happiness what you get, okay, will actually, rub away, will erase away the entire pain which was being incurred during the entire process of your research. Now, again, this is another pictorial presentation. So if you want to read it in detail, okay, this will be again provided to you in the description, wherein you have an original research work, and how do you prepare the manuscript, how do you submit the manuscript, how exactly review process will happen, then how exactly decisions are being made, then once it has been accepted, then how the publisher will take over, and then finally your paper is onto the virtual system. Now, here comes another important point. The other important point is there is a new trend from last 3-4 years which is called as open access. Now, there are two options. One, you as an author, I have been charged, and these charges are called as APC charges. Now, APC refers to article processing charges. So initially, because this is data, and data has to be maintained on the server, and this incurs some cost. So initially, the publisher was responsible for incurring this cost, and anybody who wants to read your article, they have to actually pay around $30 or $35 to the publisher, and they can have an access to your article. But now, from last 3-4 years, there's a new trend of APC, which is called as open access. Again, you have gold access, silver access, platinum access. So with this, what the publisher is trying to do is, the charges are being actually put onto the authors and called as APC charges, and then once the APC charges have been paid onto the journal, the entire article is made free to the readers. So initially the readers were incurring the charges, now the authors are incurring the charges. So what is the advantage of it? So citation. So here, once your article is freely available to the public, people would start reading your article, and they start citing or cross-referring your article, and that is how the citation index, the H index, citation index goes on increasing. So and maybe if you are writing for your research grant, okay, this can actually help the reviewers to read your entire manuscript, and this is how you can get funding. So APC is again it has its own advantages and demerits, but however, at certain point of time, okay, it is available for public, it is available on the public domain, and this is a huge advantage. But there are certain publishers, there are certain journals which actually gives a waiver onto APC charges upon a request. So it depends on the corresponding author how exactly the corresponding author is able to convince the publisher and the editor. So that's one point. The next point is you need to always give the raw data. So now everybody are interested with the raw data. Nobody is just getting satisfied with the final graph. They want to know how exactly statistics was done, what is the deviation, what was the positive deviation and what was the negative deviation, okay, and how exactly your true value deviated, or your experimental value set into the true value, or it was deviated, what was the R-square value, how exactly statistics was done, what were the methodologies, what were the methods which were being applied for analyzing your statistics. If it is a genome sequence, that genome sequence has to be deposited, and the data has to be made public, so that all the researchers can understand your research at a grassroots level. This becomes very important, and data availability, making the data available for all the researchers, has now become a important current trend. which can actually add upon to the citation, and it can add upon to the methodology, and people would start adapting your methodology, and that is how your citation can increase. So friends, with this, we just wanted to make you understand the entire pipeline of how exactly publication happens. So thank you very much for watching in. By any point of time, if you feel that a particular step has to be explained in detail, please let us know. With our experience at Biotechnica, we will make sure the in-depth video will be created onto a particular step so that you can publish it well. You can decide which journal could be the best journal for your publication, so that the entire scientific fraternity could be benefited, entire research facility fraternity could be benefited, and finally the layman, okay, the normal citizen could be benefited out of your research. Thank you very much for joining in, and we will see that the best of the best will come to you, and all the very best for your research proposals, research publications, and the entire publication pipeline. Thank you very much. Stay connected, and by any point of time, if you want to leave a comment, please make sure that you write whatever kinds of videos you want to look into, so that we will put all our efforts to make sure those videos are being shot and it will be brought to you as a major resource. Because at Biotechnica, what we feel is your success is our motivation. Thank you very much.